All right. Hey, everybody. I'm Eric Murphy, and thank you for coming to the channel. I've got another awesome conversation set up for this evening. I am going to be bringing back, one of the first apologists, or the first apologist that I've ever brought on this channel. We're going to have a deeper conversation. Dean Meadows, welcome, welcome.
Hey, what's going on, Eric?
Hey, man. Dude, thank you so much for getting together on this. I know that we weren't able to do this evening, and so we're recording a little earlier today. That way we can sit down. I just wanted to say thank you for your time.
Well, thanks for the invite. It's always a pleasure to get together with you, whether it's through calling on the ACA or being on your channel or actually being there in Austin to talk with you. I've always enjoyed our time.
Definitely, man. Yeah, you've been in this studio.
I have.
Yeah, and you lived to tell the tale. You slept among the lions.
Yeah.
So actually, when it comes to you and I getting together, we do have something really cool coming up.
We do. I'll let you introduce that.
Okay. I'm excited. In February of next year, right?
Yes. February 2021.
In February 20th or 21st, we are going to be in. We're going to be in Nashville, Tennessee, doing a debate with Ask and Wonder, I think. Possibly. Probably?
Probably.
Okay. Awesome. That makes for great TV. That's all right. That's what happens when you go live. Even if we're recording, I'm making sure this stays in. All the awkwardness that we're just gonna
That's okay.
Marinate in it. That's all right. So you've been talking a big game about the Kalam Cosmo. Well, no, hold on a second. Hold on. Dean, who are you first?
I'm Dean Meadows. I'm the executive director of the nonprofit organization called The Daily Apologist. We've been around for about, I'd say, a year and a half or so. So we provide content at our website, www.dailyapologist.com. YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, all that stuff. Instagram, we're everywhere. And so I live in North Carolina, in Gastonia, North Carolina. I have a wife named Hillary and 2 kids, with the third on the way in September.
Congratulations!
So that's who I am.
Rock on, man. So yeah, you've actually been haven't you been a pastor or a minister?
Yeah, I was a minister for 8 years. 8 years in some form or fashion.
And what got you out of it? Like, why did you stop ministering?
The reason that I stopped was to do the Daily Apologist role as the executive director. And I think this will be something that we probably already disagree on. Just seeing the trends of where primarily young people are in the country, and as far as like the vast amounts of people just in general that are leaving faith, that are leaving Christian church, I decided that there needed to be, I needed to do something or try and do something about that. And so I just decided that I was going to help found an organization that helps Christians, give good, reasonable explanations for why they believe what they believe. I think the philosophical and historical reasoning for Christianity is not necessary, or explanation for Christianity is not something that a lot of Christians are familiar with. And so when they get into situations where they're asked to provide reasons why they believe what they believe, they give the classic reason, well, I just have blind faith, and that's not a good reason.
Right. Well, and there's a Bible verse for it, to be ready to give reason for the joy in your heart, right?
First Peter, I believe it's First Peter 3:16 says to be to be ready to give an answer for the hope that you have within you.
3:15, I think. I think you might be thinking.
Might be
of John
15.
3:16. Yeah.
Gotcha. Anyways, it's there.
No worries, man.
Go to First Peter. Get to chapter 3. It's there.
It's in there somewhere. It's in there somewhere. So you are ready to give reason for the joy in your heart, and it has been a source of joy for you. Uh-oh. Dean, did I lose you? Ooh. Hey, you're back.
I'm back. I'm sorry.
Oh, thank goodness. Okay, cool. You have been talking about how the Kalam cosmological argument, as portrayed by William Lane Craig, is something that you deeply, deeply enjoy. Is that something you want to dive into today?
Yeah, sure. I think for me, the Kalam cosmological argument is my favorite argument. I don't know that with the average person that it'll be the most compelling. But I would love to talk about the Kalam. I wake up and I start Kalaming.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, so then let's start talking about the Kalam. What is the original version of the cosmological argument for the existence of God?
Okay, so when we look at this argument, the argument stretches back, all the way to
St. Thomas Aquinas.
Even I think it's Al-Ghazali, John Philoponus, Thomas Aquinas. Cosmological argument is a family of arguments, and so basically where the Kalam returned to prominence was in 1979 when William Lane Craig took Al-Ghazali's argument, and he essentially did an update of that and included the scientific evidence that was not available to Al-Ghazali but was available to Craig. And so when you say the original argument, I'm assuming you're talking about Craig's update in 79.
Well, I'd like to just take a quick peek at the original and then talk about the update. That way we can kind of see what the difference is and why we're moving in that direction.
So the original argument is essentially whatever begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. Now, what Craig does, he essentially says, he essentially adds a part 2 to that, and his part 2 is the conceptual analysis of the argument.
Right.
So that's essentially what goes. Maybe even further back than that, the argument was whatever exists has a cause, the universe exists, therefore the universe has a cause. And so then Craig comes along and adds whatever begins to exist has a cause. So those are two forms, I guess. There's some debate about what quote classifies as the original. So what I'm going to argue for, and what I'm going to talk about is the 79 edition of the Kalam, where Craig says whatever begins to exist has a cause, the universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. And I will include the conceptual analysis at the tail end of that.
Okay.
So we're clear.
I totally understood. I'm wondering if we should start with start by bringing the entire conceptual analysis in, or talk about those first 3 parts.
Well, I don't know that you could talk about the. It doesn't matter if we do conceptual analysis at the end without if the first two are shot, then it doesn't really matter about the conceptual analysis, because the conceptual analysis comes at the conclusion of the argument.
Yeah.
So I'd go ahead and just jump right into premise 1 and premise 2 and look at this if you want.
So that which begins to exist has a cause.
Yeah.
Right. In as much as we have studied things, that appears to be correct. And in as much as we've understood how things operate, that appears to be correct. I I'm open to there not being that, but I need evidence before I'm going to believe it, right? So
yeah, I mean, I would agree with you. So the first premise of the argument is rooted in what's called the causal principle, which is a metaphysical principle that is not like a law of nature. It applies to. It seems to like it would apply to all reality. It's not like gravity. The law of gravity, might be, and I might be talking outside of my range here. The law of gravity might apply one way on Earth, but apply a different way, say on the moon.
Sure.
Right. Whereas the metaphysical principle, known as the causal principle, would apply to all of reality. That whatever begins to exist has a cause.
Got it.
So I don't know.
Can I just adjust in here just a little bit?
Sure.
So I mean, gravity is gravity wherever you go. It depends on the mass of the thing that determines its gravitational pull. That said, our experience of gravity, right, of being pulled down, is changed, but depending on the body, that we're standing on and its mass. So the gravitational pull of the moon is much lower than the gravitational pull of the Earth. Gravity still works the same, but our experience therein is different. And I think that but I think that's incredibly apt, because as we're moving forward and talking about it, we're going to be talking about what is constant and what is universal, right? Which we could say, we experience and we've studied with gravity. And what we're drawing inferences to based on our experience of it, right? If we didn't understand how gravity seems to work, we would say that there's less gravity on the moon and more gravity here. Well, the gravity is gravity. It's just our experience of it as related to the object that we're being attracted to.
And gravity would still have the same function whether I knew about it or not.
Right. Absolutely.
Fair enough.
Okay, so premise 2.
And so premise 2 is the first premise is whatever begins to exist has a cause. Second premise is the universe began to exist. And traditionally, this is where a lot of the jousting has gone on between scientists, philosophers, apologists, atheists. About whether or not the universe really does have a beginning at some point to find that path.
Sure. Ooh. As far as I'm concerned, number one, I think we're both limited to lowercase t truth. In as much as we're talking about our sense perceptions of things, right? This is not deductive, it's inductive, because we haven't explored, we haven't seen universes begin to exist. We're trying to use the clues around us, and we see a redshift in when we look at the stars, which indicates that things are spreading apart. And so if we were to reverse that to see how things were originally, we see things, convening on a single point. And we call that's what's colloquially called the Big Bang, is once that happened, when t time equals 1, that's when we're off to the races. So I understand that we've studied that. I understand that there comes a point that seems that it can be conceived as a beginning. I don't know if that beginning was the end of something else. I just don't know. But for the purposes of this conversation, so long as you're willing to grant that this is inductive, I'll give it.
I would say that the Kalam is a deductive argument as far as the syllogism goes. But I would certainly say that the evidence that is used is on the basis of what is experienced, what is seen, what is studied, and the conclusion would be an inference to the best explanation. That's how I would classify it. I wouldn't classify the entire argument as a inductive argument. I'd say, hey, there's a syllogism that's deductive. The evidence here is scientific evidence, and the conclusion is an inference to the best explanation. I don't know if that helps or not.
It further solidifies my view that it's an inductive argument, actually.
Okay.
So the structure is correct, right?
Yeah.
Your P, your Q, your entire structure there is good. If P, then Q, P, therefore Q. Right. So the structure is spot on. The end of it, the conclusion there, needs to be something solid. If you're talking about an inference, that's not deductive, right? I can give you an example of a deductive argument. All bachelors are single. Dean
is not single. Therefore, Dean is not a bachelor.
Dean is not a bachelor. Actually, that's structurally not correct. It's Dean is not a bachelor, therefore Dean is not single. You can affirm the beginning or deny the consequent, but it's the
point is, I think the structure is definitely deductive. All it says at the end of the is that there's pause.
That means we can't throw it out structurally.
I think what you really want to sink your teeth into, because I know you really want to sink your teeth into the conceptual analysis part of this.
I do. I just want to get there first.
I know you do. No, I'm with you. So do you think that the universe had a beginning, or do you think that the universe is, infinitely old?
Or option C, we haven't thought of. I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm going to leave it to people who have the maths for it. And
gotcha. So my question would be, what evidence would you need to arrive at the conclusion that the universe is finite in the past, and it's not past eternal? That it does have this beginning at a finite point in the past.
I think we would need to see what other universes being created looks like to compare to ours, to be able to be convinced of that to that kind of degree.
So then you wouldn't say, for instance, like if we took some scientific laws, applied them to this situation, or even if it could be shown that it was, at least logically shown, the universe can't be infinitely old. Those two things would convince you. Specifically, what I'm saying is, so like when we look at second law of thermodynamics, when we look at the impossibility of actual infinite, logically speaking, those two things don't convince you or don't move you to closer to saying, okay, well, the universe most likely has a finite point at which it came into being.
Oh no, I'm happy saying most likely.
Okay.
I'm not willing to deductively say, in the same way that a bachelor by definition has to be single. Mm-hmm. How the all men are mortal. Socrates is man, therefore Socrates is mortal, right? You're using something that is by definition true, and then applying the circumstance to it. And if it meets that definition, or if it does not meet that definition, then we can make a solid argument about that, right? So when we're saying everything that begins to exist has a cause, mm-hmm. That is not by definition true, but we can infer the trait of one to the other, and I'm willing to grant that, so we can move on. The second, though, is something that I don't think we have enough evidence to say deductively. Now, inductively, it seems to me most likely to be the case. The reality of it probably doesn't care at all what I think. It either had a cause or it didn't have a cause. There was a beginning or there wasn't a beginning. But I'm definitely probably leaning closer to that it having had a beginning, sure. I just won't grant that it's deductive.
Okay. And okay. So you grant one with a little bit of skepticism. You grant two, but you're not saying that it's deductive; it's an inductive.
Well, that entire thing is an inductive argument.
Are you saying structurally, or are you saying like the evidence provided for it?
No, the structure's great. If it wasn't structurally good, I would throw it out because the structure is bad.
So the issue isn't the structure. The issue is
you're appealing to likelihood and calling it a deductive argument. And likelihood is a hallmark of inductive arguments.
Okay, so explain to me, or not explain to me. This is interesting for me because it seems like, and I could be wrong, it seems like what you're saying is, I agree with the structure of the argument. I agree with one, I agree with two, I agree with three, the structure's fine. I agree with one, evidentially, with some hesitancy. I agree with, I'm more on the long lines that two is right, but I'm not fully granting that because we just don't have absolute certainty about it.
Well, I don't think we can ever attain absolute certainty. I think when we're talking about deductive things, we're only talking about a deductive argument when we're using definitions of things to be true, right? If we're following the laws of logic, we're either talking about that thing, we're not talking about that thing, but a thing can't be itself and another thing at the same time, right? So if we're talking about each of these things, I don't know if a thing, the universe having a cause, is definitionally true. But if we grant the first one, and grant the second, I'll move forward. If we can present that let's just go. It's a nitpick. It's a nitpick. If it's presented as strong and if it's presented as a strong inductive argument, I'm great. If it's presented as a deductive argument, I'm going to be careful of the content of those premises. That said, the only reason that skepticism kicked in is because your question was, "Hey, Eric, don't you think it's likely?" And as soon as that likely word came in, my philosophy 101 chimed in and went, "Ooh, we're talking about likelihood. That's inductive, not deductive."
Well, let me ask this question, and we can move on. I guess my question would be, so we know, or I think logically speaking, I'm a firm believer that actual infinites don't exist. Second law of thermodynamics seems to suggest that the universe has a beginning. Why not just say, because actual infinites don't exist, and given the second law, the universe can't be eternal in the past? Why not just say that?
Number one, I have a knee-jerk reaction when a Christian says second law of thermodynamics. It's not your fault. There have just been bad actors in your place who have ruined that.
Okay, elaborate on that for me. Elaborate on that.
Sure. I've watched videos and spoke to Christian apologists who've said that the argument from design, right? The argument from, look at the trees, the teleological?
Yeah.
Telos.
That's what it's called.
Yeah, there we go. The teleological argument has to be true because the second law of thermodynamics would prevent the creation of Earth, the creation of humans on this planet. And that's just not the case. It's interesting. If you're talking about a system that tends towards entropy, you're talking about a closed system. Earth is not a closed system. We're constantly getting energy from the sun. We're constantly receiving more, and that makes it not a closed system. So that argument, the second law of thermodynamics, I've just seen it posted all over Facebook. The second law of thermodynamics destroys atheism. I'm like, oh my gosh. But it's not your fault. It's not your fault. I just have the reaction.
I understand that, and I understand, and I get that. I had never heard that before. That because of the second law.
Uh-oh. Well, it looks like we have slowed down just a little bit more, but that is the risk that we take. I cringe when I hear those types of arguments about the second law, not the creation of humans. Because one, I haven't heard of it, and when you said it, I kind of cringed a little bit myself. Right? It's just you can't.
And all I'm saying is, the universe seems to be a closed system from what we currently understand. Now there's a move towards multiverse. We can get into that a little bit later.
Nope.
But
nope.
You don't think the universe is a closed system?
No, the multiverse thing.
You're not a fan of the multiverse?
I'm not a fan of the multiverse.
Okay. Well, good. This actually I think helps me. With the Kalam. So I'm glad that you don't appeal to a multiverse.
That's all right. But ultimately, this grants us to the universe requiring a beginning.
A cause.
Sure.
Having a cause. And so this is where the question becomes. Once again, I would say, hey, what's the inference the best explanation?
Right
here. And this is where Craig in his argument moves from three. Sorry. And then ask the question. Well, what is the nature? What's the nature of the cause?
Okay. So when you're saying the nature of a thing, let's make sure that our definition is correct. When you say nature, what do you mean?
So what would be the essential properties of the cause that brought the universe into being? Is it the universe itself? Is it aliens? Is it God? So what are the properties that could instantiate the universe, or bring the universe into existence?
Well, that's kind of interesting. Even your three examples. Can a universe create itself? I don't know. Have I experienced a thing creating itself? No. Would I be willing to grant that? I would need to see evidence, but I definitely wouldn't stand on the universe created itself.
I agree.
It's just, I don't know. And it's simply because I don't have enough evidence. And I'm probably going to die before that kind of evidence is brought forward. But I just need to know that I'm okay saying I don't know on that. Aliens would be within that universe. So that would be like asking you if you parented your parents, which doesn't make sense. And God, well, I don't know if God is even allowed in the conversation yet, because we haven't defined a God, we haven't discussed a God, and we haven't agreed that a God can meet the qualities of something that can create a universe.
One second.
Sure.
Okay.
But that's okay. I want to let you move forward though into the.
No, that's fine. So I find this interesting, and if I'm miscategorizing you or misrepresenting you let me know, and I know you will. So far it seems like you're saying, hey, I grant one, I grant two. I'm okay with the conclusion I'm okay with the conclusion of the argument, and as we look at the causes, you've already said, hey, no multiverses, aliens would be inside the universe, and I haven't experienced anything creating itself. I guess my question is, why not just go ahead and say, God is the best explanation?
Well, because that would be intellectually dishonest of me.
But why is that?
Because I don't have evidence of a God. If we're postulating conclusions with absolutely zero evidence, then I think a God would rank below a universe creating itself in terms of possibility, because a universe creating itself is a whole lot better than a God creating itself and then having more qualities on top of that. You don't just think a God is a thing that created itself and created the universe. You believe that a God created itself, created the universe, created us with a plan in mind, sent Jesus down as part of, this plan, and that you're in that plan, that God works on, and is influencing the lives of people. All of those different qualities are in addition to a thing creating itself and creating the universe. So if we're just listing out likely possible things, your God ranks below a universe creating itself.
Well, let's unpack that a little bit.
Sure.
Eric. I'm not saying that God created himself and then created the universe. I'm saying that there's a God that created the universe, and per the conceptual analysis of what's the best explanation for the cause, the quality seen in that, the inference to the best explanation would be God. Now, all of the other stuff that you mentioned there, like sending Jesus down, creating us, having a plan, having a purpose, all of that stuff I think is more secondary. I think to establish that, you've got to go into, was Jesus a real person? Is the New Testament reliable? Did the resurrection take place? I think you and I both agree that this argument simply gets you to a God in general. The definition of the God that is being described, it could be Allah, it could be Yahweh, it could be a God that
no one's ever heard of.
No one's ever heard of.
It could be a God that existed for all of 2 seconds to create the universe and then poof out of existence. It could be
you're right.
Like Matt says, universe farting pixies.
Well,
you've never heard of universe farting pixies?
I've heard of it. I just disagree with it. I think it's a bad analogy for multiple reasons.
If we're talking about likelihood, and we're allowed to just throw stuff out there without evidence, then I think they're both equally likely.
Well, and that's the thing. I think when you look at the conceptual analysis of the Kalam,
we've been teasing it for 45 minutes. What is it?
So the conceptual analysis of the Kalam would say, all right, so on the basis of what we've seen in the about the universe, time, space, matter come into existence per the Big Bang, and therefore time, space, and matter, as we've already said, they don't create itself. So therefore, whatever has created or has caused the universe to come into being must be timeless, spaceless, and immaterial. So there are more qualities, but let's just start there.
Okay. So if we're giving this conceptual analysis and we're saying that there had to be a creation, then the creator needs to be timeless, spaceless, and immaterial.
Correct.
That sounds like you're describing a character that is unable to reach into the bubble of the universe, that is not, because you can't operate without mass, right? You can't operate without time. So, I mean, I don't know.
Well, why don't you ask me some questions so I can try and figure out.
Sure.
What the best.
Sure.
Round to go is.
Well, I'm thinking about step 2 here. Or what would happen if I granted that.
Okay.
And I'm thinking that if I'm granting a being that is, or a thing that is timeless, spaceless, and immaterial, can a timeless, spaceless, immaterial thing interact in this universe? I would say no. And so at this point now we're just kind of getting into, we're getting out of the real world and onto a chalkboard. And and I'm okay with us being on the chalkboard so long as we're saying, okay, we're no longer pointing at things that, we can have evidence of. We're no longer pointing at, we're now in chalkboard land. And that's fine.
Chalkboard land. I've never heard you use that one.
And that's fine. For the sake of moving forward, I definitely want to, hear what the rest is. But that thing is timeless, spaceless, and immaterial. I have no idea what that is. That equates to nothing to me. It's something that is timeless, spaceless, and immaterial is indistinguishable from nothing at all.
Do what? Say that again? Sorry, you broke up a little bit.
Sure. I said something that is timeless, spaceless, and immaterial to me is indistinguishable from nothing at all.
Gotcha. And I think that's where the next two qualities would come in. The next two qualities would come in, which would be powerful and also personal.
What do you mean by
that
power?
Would distinguish it. That would distinguish it from nothing. So powerful in the sense of it has the ability to bring about the instantiation of the universe.
Okay. How?
Because of its very nature. Its very nature is that of.
But then you're defining it into existence.
Well, no, I'm not defining it into existence. I'm just labeling the quality that this being has. This being is timeless, spaceless, immaterial, powerful enough. It has the ability to bring about the creation of the universe and is a personal being.
We'll get to personal in just a second.
Okay.
I want to just jump on powerful for a second. So we're talking about this thing for me that's indistinguishable from nothing. So I'm drawing a circle around a little bit of nothingness on the chalkboard, and I'm going, okay, this nothingness is different from any other nothingness, and this nothingness is now going to have qualities, and so you're saying that nothingness has to have power. Well, but if I were to think about that, I would say, can nothingness exist? Can something that is timeless, spaceless, and immaterial not have power? Sure, why not? And if that's the case, then it is not intrinsic to that thing that it is powerful.
But the fact that it has the qualities of being timeless, spaceless, and immaterial.
Mm-hmm.
Would still distinguish it from nothing because nothing is nothing.
Is nothing time? Like, does time interact with nothing? Does space interact with nothing? And does matter interact with nothing? No.
But those are still qualities that would distinguish it from nothing on top of being powerful and personal. So what I'm saying is powerful and personal distinguish this being from nothing.
Right. You're taking the empty set and you're putting something into it.
I don't know what you mean by that.
Sure. When we're talking about nothing, right, that's something that can only live on a chalkboard. In this universe that we have, the way we understand things, nothingness, in this chalkboard way, can't actually exist. There's always something there. That said, if we were to list out all possible qualities, characteristics, traits, everything that is in existence, and we were to create a set of all things, and then we were to create a set that is the empty set, right? It's just two brackets with nothing in it, right? You're describing the empty set, where you're talking about something that's timeless, spaceless, and immaterial. So it is no longer has any of the qualities of that first set that encompasses everything. You're now talking about the empty set. right?
But wouldn't that? Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. So now we're loading things into the empty set, which by definition makes it not the empty set. Now we're going to call this the God set just to make it easier. Now in this God set, I'm looking to see if that God set contains any qualities that belong in the everything that exists set, right? Because if it goes there, then it needs to not be timeless, spaceless, and immaterial. Right. So if power requires material, if power requires energy, if power requires time, if any of those things are the case, then you're not talking about a timeless, spaceless, immaterial thing, right? And so if
I don't know if I'm following on that. Simply because you're saying that I'm adding into the set. What I'm simply saying is that the powerful and personal aspects of this being, it doesn't start out as a nothing set. It starts out in the everything that's described set, because the being already has powerful and personal attached with it. So I don't see how it starts out in an empty set. It's just the qualities of the being. The being is timeless, spaceless, immaterial, powerful, and personal. That's not nothing. That's not nothing.
Yeah, if you're granting that, if it has that, then it has that. You're correct.
Well, I'm saying is,
but that's circular, right? You're creating a tautology where if this God is powerful and personal, then it's powerful and personal. Totally. That you're appealing to it by the definition you're creating for it. I'm asking you to justify the definition.
So I'm justifying the definition, and I don't think I'm arguing in a circle. I'm justifying the definition on the basis of the conclusion of what we see in the Kalam, that whatever begins to exist has a cause. The universe begins to exist, and the universe has a cause. So what's the best explanation of the cause of the universe? And we've already said that time, or at least I'm positing that time, space, and matter cannot create itself. And you granted that you have no experience of seeing things
create themselves. Correct.
So then whatever caused the universe to come into existence can't be time, space, and matter. Therefore, it must be timeless, spaceless, and immaterial. That's just the logical conclusion.
Oh, I'm granting there.
Okay.
I'm saying, okay, we're taking this empty set.
So it also must be powerful to bring about the existence of the universe.
Okay, can I maybe
and then it's
bracket in a different definition here? Or if we're talking about powerful, I'll grant powerful so long as we define powerful the same way, right? If we're now creating a thing that could possibly have created the universe, then the only power that is whatever power is sufficient to create the universe. No more, no less. It just, at a minimum, has to have that.
But at the minimum, it has to have the power to create the universe?
Yeah, or the ability to.
Okay, I can grant that.
Sure.
I don't see if there's a problem with that at this point in the argument.
Sure. So let's say, do you like X-Men?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
We might. Okay, good. We're gonna have an issue. Dean.
It's not my favorite series. It's not my favorite, but I like them.
So there are, B-list characters, and
Sure.
There's a B-list character. He has one power,
and
it's to blow himself up.
Oh, gotcha.
He can only do it once, because then he'll die. But he can do it.
Okay.
So, can he blow himself up and continue to exist? No. But he definitely had, at a minimum, the ability to blow himself up, right? So what I'm saying is, I'll grant, for the purposes of this argument, I'll continue to say, whatever's sufficient, to create a universe. That's what I will grant by the definition of power. So if we can both say, is powerful, in my brain, what it's going to say is, at a minimum, has the ability to create a universe.
Okay. I don't have a problem with that
Cool.
at this point.
Okay. And
Not a
personal.
problem with me. I think the being would have to be personal because for a couple of reasons. I think, as Richard Swinburne talks about, there are only two explanations for causes. One is scientific, and the other is personal. And so, for it to be a scientific explanation, you would have to have initial operating conditions that could bring about the beginning of the universe, and therefore, since those do not exist, given the Kalam, it would have to be personal. So another way of looking at this would be, say I walked into the kitchen and there was a pot of boiling water.
Mm-hmm. And Dean has lagged out just a little bit again. I'm going to keep this in. The fact that we recorded this a few hours ahead of time. Yes, give me just a second, Dean. The fact that we recorded this a few hours ahead of time does not mean that it gives me license to mess with it. So we're going to keep this in, and we're going to keep going. Hey, Dean.
Sorry about that.
Pot of water boiling.
Pot of water boiling. I walked in and I said, "Hey, why is the water boiling? Or why is the pot on the stove boiling?" And my wife could say, "Well," and she could describe all the mechanical issues that were going on. Well, the heat from the oven transferred kinetic energy to the water that caused the bubbles to boil, and that's why the pot boiled. Or she could say, "I turned the oven on."
Right. One of them is
the scientific. One of them is the scientific explanation for why that's taking place. The other one is, hey, I turned a pot of water on, or boiling pot of water on. When it comes to the creation of the universe, or the universe coming into being, I don't want to insert smuggling creation. The existence of the universe. Mm-hmm. There are no initial operating conditions that are present to cause the universe to come into existence. It seems to me the only explanation left is the personal side.
Sure. Help me out here just a little bit. How can I say the same thing about looking at a beach and say, how did this beach come into being?
I'm sure you could. Yeah, you could. I think you could.
So, because that pulls the human out of it, and we're now looking at just a thing, right?
Yeah.
You know, I wouldn't equate it that way. I might equate it more to, seeing something just existing, right? How did that thing come into being? Was there a personal influence that created that beach?
That would depend on whether there are initial operating conditions as to whether the beach could be created through natural force or it would require a personal force.
Okay, so the initial operating conditions, just so I'm clear, are you saying the initial operating conditions for the creation of a universe necessarily exist outside of time, space, and material?
What I'm saying with the in your beach analogy is this. I can look at the beach and say, all right, is this beach that I'm looking at, is this something that just exists necessarily, or is this beach something that could have, there are initial operating conditions which have produced this beach? You can do a scientific study on that and say, well, as we look at the life of this area or whatever, this probably took place with a volcano explosion. I'm not a science guru.
Yeah,
but here are the naturalistic explanations. Here are the naturalistic explanations for the beach.
Right, tidal movements.
Or they could say, like here at Lake Norman, they could say, 5,000 years ago, this lake wasn't around, and then in 1970, a bunch of people moved here, and it's the largest man-made lake in the world. Either way, there's still those initial operating conditions. There are conditions that are conducive for the beach being created by things that are in nature, or things that are already present that allow for something to exist.
Okay. So what are the initial operating conditions for the creation of a universe?
Gotcha. So my answer for that is the personal being, because you don't have anything that's present.
Hold on. It has to be personal because there are no operational conditions.
Correct.
And the operational condition is that it's personal.
No. What I'm saying is that initial operating conditions for the existence of the universe are not even around, given the Kalam, and I think the scientific evidence. Therefore, the only explanation is a personal explanation. Now, we can get into whether or not there was a quantum vacuum that was around, or worm tunneling or anything like that came through.
I honestly, I'm taking the word personal and I'm just replacing it with X right now. And I'm trying to see if we can justify X to begin with, and then we can talk about what X is. The justification, right, is you're saying personal, and now I'm saying, okay, how are we defining that? What are we putting in the definition of this X? So we're saying that personal is something that is created when there's a lack of operating conditions.
I would probably extend it further than just that.
Okay. So
I would say agency.
Okay. So agency and a lack of operating conditions. So you can say the pot exists, you can say the water exists, but putting the water in the pot and putting the pot on the stove and turning on the stove is something that doesn't naturally occur in most people's kitchens.
Correct.
That said, something had to put that into place, right?
Correct.
Okay. Do we have experience of something without time or space or matter being able to put anything into place? No.
Yes. I would say yes.
If you're going to say the universe,
I know.
I'm going to say you are running in circles.
I know, but I'm saying that being exists. Is what I'm trying to argue for in the Kalam.
Right, you're talking about the existence so far of something that is so far it's something that's indistinguishable from nothing, because it is not at all interactive in this universe. It's nothing to me. So now we're talking about personal, right? And by saying personal, we're ascribing agency. It is shoehorning agency in.
I think it's the logical. I think it's the logical conclusion of the cause.
I think it's shoehorning. But
why is it shoehorning?
Because can something be personal without having agency?
Can something be personal without having agency?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so. I wouldn't.
No.
I don't think so. No.
So agency is a prerequisite for personal, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't see why that's...
Have you justified agency in your subset? Because what you're doing is you're saying that there's a thing, agency, and packed into agency is, or you're saying that there's a thing, it's personal, and packed into personal is agency, right? And if I accept personal, then no matter what you give it, right, you're saying that which does not have operating conditions, it necessarily also has to have agency. Right. So I'm asking you to justify agency.
Okay, I'm justifying agency on the basis of the fact that there doesn't seem to be an explanation for the universe outside of the conclusion of the Kalam. So what I'm getting at is...
I can point out a volcano, Dean. I can say that volcano created this chain of islands. Right?
Correct. Correct. I agree.
That volcano does not have agency, and it does not have personality. It wasn't personally creating that chain of islands, and yet you have the creation of a thing, this chain of islands.
And this is the distinction, though, Eric, because in the creation of the chain of islands, you already have the initial conditions conducive for those chains of islands to be created.
And that initial condition is the volcano.
And you don't have that with the universe. As far as we know, there's nothing. As far as we know, there's nothing that that is present outside, materially speaking, outside of the universe that could cause the universe to come into existence. There's nothing that would be the volcano prior. In your analogy, there's nothing. The string of islands would be the universe. The volcano would be the thing that causes the universe. There's nothing naturalistically speaking that is in existence. There's no initial operating conditions that would cause the universe. Therefore, the only other category that's plausible is a personal agent.
Right, and I'm wondering.
That's what I'm saying.
So this thing that you're creating, that we're talking about, this God concept, right? You're saying cannot be like a volcano because it doesn't have properties. But it can be a personal thing like your wife in your pot of water example, because your wife has agency and yet your wife also has physical properties, right? A volcano does not have as many steps as your wife, right? This person has far more to them than a volcano does, right? Because of that, I would say that if you're going to say something that is sufficient to create the universe, if you are going to ascribe agency to it, I think that is an additional step, because I can conceive of something that does not have agency creating the universe. And that would have one massively smaller step to it. So how do you justify adding that on?
Okay, so run that by me again, because you broke up in the middle of it.
Sure, no problem.
So you're saying that the volcano is obviously not like my wife. The volcano does not have agency.
Right.
But the volcano has the initial operating conditions conducive to creating island chains.
Yeah, and your wife also has the initial operating conditions to put the water on the stove.
Correct.
Okay, how are they different?
How are they different?
Well, I'm asking you to justify the latter as different from the former.
It's different because what we see in the initial operating conditions of the volcano is that that's something that takes place with consistency when those initial operating conditions are present.
Sure.
And whereas water putting itself into the pot onto the stove is not.
We're not talking about the pot on the stove. In this example,
it requires an agent to do it.
In this example, the pot on the stove is the universe, and the island chain is the universe. In this example, my wife and the volcano. I feel really awkward talking about your wife. I've never met her. We've talked. She seems wonderful. Can we say someone other than your wife?
Well, if you want to, just use me then. Use somebody else. I don't know. Use Matt Dillahunty.
Yeah. Let's talk about my co-host V. They're not in the room. So V put the water on the stove. V also has all of those qualities that you just listed as part of the volcano. So I still don't see it as being different.
I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm still confused.
No.
You're saying that V is the same as the volcano.
Yeah, in as much as you're describing this volcano, there has to be a set of conditions for V to exist. Namely, our parents.
Yeah.
And then moving on, there's a massive set of things that have to exist for V to exist.
But you're saying that the pot with the water on the stove is the universe.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so the other, it seems to me, the analogy would be the string of islands is the same as the pot.
Yes. In this example, yes.
Okay, in this example, yes. Okay, so the difference between these two is that the islands are produced by a set of initial conditions that are already present.
Right. And so
whereas the pot, but the pot, water being in a pot on a stove, is not something that takes place without agency doing it.
Right.
Whereas the string of volcanoes takes place naturally and doesn't require agency.
Mhm.
What I'm saying is that the reason that the universe has to be the creation of a personal being or a personal being agency is because it's not like the volcano. It's more like the pot that has water that's put on the stove.
Cool. How do you know that?
Because I feel like I'm going in circles. Because if the universe, if whatever begins to exist has a cause, and the universe began to exist, and there are no initial operating conditions to produce that universe that are present, from a mechanical standpoint, then the only other explanation would be agency, would be a timeless, spaceless, immaterial, personal, powerful being.
I got you. So let me try this. Can V put the water in the pot and put the pot on to boil if there's no water and there's no pot? No matter how much V wants.
No, there's no water, there's no pot. You can't put it on the stove.
Okay, cool. Exactly. That's where it falls apart.
I don't.
So
elaborate. I'm not
sure, no problem. I can wish and dream into this hand that it'll fill up with money. That doesn't mean it's going to happen, right? Okay. You're talking about existence of things, which is necessarily not a part of something that is immaterial, timeless, and spaceless. So where does that come in, right? You're saying something which has the ability to create it, right? If we granted that in power, okay. Now we're saying that we have a thing that is able to create universes, right?
Yeah.
Okay, volcanoes can create islands.
Right.
And I granted just enough power for the instantiation of a universe. I didn't say anything else. So a volcano is still more likely for me. It's something that does not require agency.
I'm going to be honest with you. I am just kind of lost in
sure
where this is breaking down. You're saying that. I mean, it just sounds like you're saying that the universe is the product.
We're still in chalkboard
for me. I'm from backwoods North Carolina.
Oh, stop. Okay, so we're still in chalkboard land, right? We're no longer talking about things that exist in this universe, because they can't, by definition, because we're talking about something that would have to create it, right? So I grant the creator part. If we're talking about something existing, now you want to bring in personal, and you're saying that it has to be personal, and you're defining personal as something that exists that cannot exist without the conditions, those operating conditions. Is that correct? So unless that personal agency is there, you can't have the pot of water boiling, because it doesn't put itself together, right? How do you know universes don't put themselves together?
Okay. The reason that we can know, or that we can know that universes don't put themselves together, is because. And what do you mean by put themselves together first? What do you mean by that?
Sure. Volcano creating islands.
Still doesn't answer what do you mean by universes. Do you mean by putting themselves together? Is that like equal to cause themselves?
No.
Cause themselves.
Yeah, I'm not talking about self-causing. So is it more likely that this creator has agency or doesn't. I don't have to give agency. I don't have to give evidence for non-agency. That's where we begin.
Gotcha.
Where you move toward is agency. You need to give evidence to move toward agency.
Okay.
And so right now, I can conceive of this argument without personal in it, because I can conceive of a universe being created without agency.
Okay.
You know, that's where the universe farting pixies come in.
But pixies are agents.
No, but they did not. The fart was not something that was intended, right? Like, it's just a byproduct.
But it was the product of an agent that exists.
Okay. Then immaterial volcanoes. Timeless, spaceless, immaterial volcanoes.
Okay. Then all you're doing, what you're doing is you're simply ascribing the qualities of God and adding it as a volcano. You're just describing God.
Sure.
In doing that.
As
a volcano.
If you're describing God that way, then that God is not personal because it does not have agency.
No, I'm saying that's what you're doing. If you're saying, well, it's timeless, spaceless, immaterial, it's timeless, spaceless.
Oh, and there goes Dean one more time. Thank you so much for your support. Since until he gets back here, I just wanted to say,
I really do hate my internet connection. I'm sorry. But no, when you said something to the effect of timeless, powerful volcanoes, you're just describing God as a volcano. That's all you're doing.
Sure, if God does not have agency, yes, you're right.
So I mean, it's I struggle to see how you can accept, from the beginning, how you can accept premise 1, premise 2, premise 3.
Mm-hmm.
Accept that there is no multiverse, or that you don't accept the multiverse. You don't think aliens are in the universe. You don't experience things creating themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, outside of that, what do you think is the best explanation for the existence of the universe? If those are the things that you said previously, but you're not accepting God, then what's your best explanation for? What's your inference to the best explanation?
I don't know.
Of the universe. I don't know. Okay.
I
mean, then I can't. Then there's nothing that I can demonstrate, or there's nothing that I'm going to say that's going to move you off of that. I don't think.
Actually, I absolutely think you're wrong. I think that if you can show that it is more likely to have agency, then I'll still follow you. But right now, it's going in circles. You feel it's going in circles. I feel it's going in circles. We both know that this is going in circles, and the circle is going around. Universe exists. Is the universe more like a pot of water boiling, or is it more like an island chain existing?
Well, then you would
I'm saying it's more like an island chain existing. And if I look at that, I can say, okay, agency is not required there. And your counter to that also counters the pot of water boiling. And if you're giving something that counters both of them, then I'm okay with that. Then they're both not there.
What my counter? I don't understand. What do you think that my counter is?
Your counter is initial operating conditions, right? There are initial operating conditions for the volcano. There are not initial operating conditions for the pot of water boiling, right? They're
not initial. Yeah, they're not initial operating conditions.
Yeah,
the water being placed in the pot and put on the stove. That requires agency.
Right, and there are not initial operating conditions for the islands existing them by themselves either. Right, they had to come from somewhere. Where they come from is the volcano. Right.
Okay.
So we're now applying. If we were to apply this the same way, are there initial operating conditions for the pot of water? No. Are there initial operating conditions for the islands? No. Okay, back up a step. Are there initial operating conditions for V? Yes. Are there initial operating conditions for the volcano? Yes. So in both circumstances, we have something that has initial operating conditions creating something that does not. Your counter to what I said counters both of them because you're applying one to the pot of water and you're not comparing that to the island. You're comparing that to the thing that created it. And so those need to be even. You're not countering the result. It's uneven, dude. I don't know how else to describe this. I'm trying my best.
Okay. So the only point that I'm simply trying to make is this. And maybe this will clear it up from.
Okay. Did that make any sense at all?
The circular scrum we're getting at. I think I see what you're saying.
Oh, thank you. Okay, hold on a second. For those of you watching, that was worth my time. I see you in the comments. Holy crap, why did it go on this long? For this moment. This one, right here. Okay, go on, Dean.
So the point that I'm simply making is that when you have the universe that we live in,
Mm-hmm.
my question is there a scientific, and what I mean by that is those initial operating conditions that are present.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a scientific explanation for the universe coming into existence?
There doesn't have to be to counter what you're saying.
No, what I'm saying is if that's not present.
Mm-hmm.
So for instance, let's go. Let me try and elaborate. So, the principle of causality that says
can I take a stab at this really quick? Are you trying to point at the idea of among all possibilities, once you start eliminating possibilities, whatever is left, no matter how improbable, is what did it? Right?
No, I'm not going there. What I'm simply trying to show. So for instance, the principle of causality, the causal principle, says you can't get something from nothing, right? All I'm trying to show is that to the best evidence, there was at one time nothing, and now there is something, and that the universe is created.
Sure.
What I'm simply arguing is that the best explanation of that. Of the universe's creation from ex nihilo, nothing, to something is not some type of naturalistic mechanical process, because those don't even exist.
Right, and neither
does... It must be an agent
neither do agents, Dean. Neither do agents. Everything that has agency also exists, which is by definition not a quality of this creator, and so cannot have agency. Can you give me an example of something that does not exist that has agency?
No, I'm saying that this being does exist with agency. It's timeless, spaceless, and imperial, and it has agency. It would be the equivalent.
In the same way, there's a naturalistic explanation outside of the universe that did it. You're just giving yourself special permission at this point. How many agents exist outside of time, space, and matter? None. This is the exact same response you're giving. So why aren't you applying it to your own God?
No, what I'm saying is that you're presupposing that those things, that agents don't exist now. There's not an agent that is there. What I'm saying is
yes. Tell me that you're not presupposing. Please tell me you're not making the exact same presupposition.
I'm not. It's not a presupposition. It's not a presupposition on the basis of my conclusion is not a presupposition that God exists.
No. You're presupposing agency without matter.
No. And that's not a presupposition. That is a conclusion on the basis of the argument of the Kalam.
No, the argument of the Kalam gets you to the instantiation of the universe by a creator. That creator does not have to have agency. Agency is something that you need to show, and every single example you've given has been an appeal that throws both of them out. You just threw that out. You're saying operating conditions have to exist for non-agency things to create, right? And I'm saying, then that's fine. That also applies to your example. Operating conditions also have to exist for your creator to have agency.
No. You're missing the point here. What I'm saying.
Oh, I get the point.
What I'm saying is that you're saying that I'm presupposing that there's agency, and all I'm trying to tell you is that my conclusion is not a presupposition that agency exists. My conclusion is that the agency that created the universe comes from the conclusion of the entire argument known as the Kalam cosmological argument. I said in the beginning that I was going to go for the first three premises and then the conceptual analysis, just as characterized.
If I granted the conclusion, I would also be granting the premises. That's circular. I don't care. I'm asking you to justify the premise. The premise is that it's personal. I'm bringing up my refutations for why personal can't be there. And it can't be personal because everything that you're using to throw out not personal also throws out personal.
I don't know how. Okay, that's where I need some help. How does it throw out?
And there goes Dean one more time. That's okay. He'll be back shortly. And in the meantime, I have Nothing from Nothing stuck in my head. If you haven't listened to that song, please check out that song. It's amazing.
Okay. I'm back. I'm sorry.
Have you heard Nothing from Nothing?
Have I heard the song?
Yeah.
No, I haven't.
No?
I haven't heard Nothing from Nothing.
Nothing from nothing leaves nothing. You gotta have
maybe I could simplify it
with me. Go ahead.
Maybe I could simplify it this way. Maybe I could simplify it this way because scientific initial operating conditions might be too loaded of terminology. What about mechanical conditions, say like quantum mechanics or naturalistic
conditions. Sure, naturalistic explanations.
Something like that. I don't know if.
I will jump out my window before I say quantum. So let's go with naturalism. I'm not going to do that. Sorry, Deepak Chopra.
If there's literally nothing,
right?
Not scientific nothing, not
right, chalkboard nothing.
But if there's literally
theoretical chalkboard
nothing, if there's nothing, if there is nothing, and something cannot come from nothing, then it seems to me the naturalistic explanation for the existence of the universe is eliminated, and the only thing that you're left with is personal agency, something like a.
I'm sorry. Are you saying personal agency is not naturalistic? I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm not going to go further until you can tell me personal agency is not naturalistic.
If it's not, if it's timeless, spaceless, and immaterial.
Sure, and if monkeys flew out of my ass, I'd be able to create universes too. Don't read it in. We're supposed to get there from the front, not by backing into it.
I'm not. That's the conclusion of the Kalam, Eric.
I understand
what you're stuck with.
Dean, I understand that the conclusion of the Kalam, as presented by Dr. William Lane Craig, considers the premises that you're trying to back up true. But it's true because it says it's true.
Though. But you've seeded those three.
Timeless, spaceless, and material. Yes, I did. I seeded those three so we can move forward.
So I don't understand. I don't understand if you've seeded timeless, spaceless, and material, and there's no naturalistic explanation.
I didn't say that. Hold on, I didn't say that.
No, I'm asking you.
Sure. Is there a naturalistic explanation for the beginning of the universe?
But then your answer is, but then you fall back on, well, I don't know.
Well, so I actually do have a presupposition here, and I'm willing to fly that flag. And that is that every explanation that I have come across for a thing, and every explanation for everything that we understand so far, and I anticipate we will understand in the future, is naturalistic. And so to apply a non-naturalistic explanation to a thing because we do not know is jumping the gun. In the same way I can count on gravity, I can count on naturalistic explanations. And so just because I don't know does not make it non-naturalistic, and it does not open the door to non-naturalistic. It just means that we don't have that. But I absolutely expect that it's going to be a naturalistic explanation.
But I'm not appealing to non-naturalism. I'm appealing to the evidence that we see from cosmology.
Okay.
Suggests that the universe is finite as far as its age.
Okay.
That it is finite in the past. And so the question that we have to ask is, all right, what is the best explanation for this universe's existence? And
I know.
And the way that some have tried to elaborate on that is the multiverse. You said it's rejected.
Yeah, I'm not going to go down that road.
I'm just repeating what's been said.
Right. We're tying it back together here.
And then you don't believe that things in general create themselves. So that would apply to the universe. It doesn't create itself. There's no multiverse. Aliens wouldn't do it because they would be in the universe. Mm-hmm. And so you believe you say you don't have the answer yet, but you think there'll be a naturalistic explanation. Mm-hmm. So my question is why isn't that committing the same thing that you're accusing me of doing, which is reading in or arguing in God? Why isn't that naturalism of the gaps?
Sure, because I have all of the universe as evidence for mine.
Okay.
I can open up a science textbook and show you naturalistic explanations for everything in that book. Are you denying that is the case? I can take you to any department at a university, right, that studies or makes decisions about things that exist in this universe. Mm-hmm. All have naturalistic explanations. How many non-naturalistic explanations do you have? And that's the one we're arguing about. So no, that is not the same. It's just not.
So is it, and let me ask you this question if that's okay.
Yeah.
So isn't that like saying, because every single piece of the elephant is light, therefore the whole elephant is light? Isn't that admitting the fallacy of composition? That because everything in the universe has a naturalistic explanation, it therefore follows that the universe must have a naturalistic explanation as a whole?
No, I told you that's a presupposition. It's a presupposition that's based on good evidence, though, and that evidence is thus. I don't see any evidence to point toward non-naturalistic explanation as a plausible explanation. So if it's not even plausible, it cannot be probable.
But you've already agreed with
nothing.
And this is
I agree. Timeless, spaceless, immaterial, indistinguishable from nothing is something that I agree to exist on.
But you also granted powerful insofar as sufficient to create a universe.
Sure. I don't know what that looks like, but sure.
Okay. Well, and this is where I'm struggling with our conversation is that you've granted timeless, spaceless, immaterial, and powerful so far as to create a universe. You're struggling with agency, and I understand that. Not struggling. You disagree with agency. I shouldn't say struggling. That's too disingenuous. And then you have everything over here that you've already said you don't like. Multiverse, all that stuff we've already rehashed. So I'm I guess my question is, what would need to be shown to convince you that that agency is involved?
Sure.
In the creation of the universe.
I right now, what I'm saying is you need to show me that agency is something that is different and necessary. And I'm saying that every example that you've given to show that agency is different and necessary throws out all of it.
Okay. So let me do a follow up. How would I be able, or what would you need to see in my explanation that could show that agency is different and necessary?
Absolutely. You would need to demonstrate agency without time, space, or matter.
Okay. Agency without time, space, and matter. So if I appeal to an unembodied mind, that seems to me an unembodied mind would not necessarily need could be timeless, spaceless, and immaterial. Powerful in person.
That would be like a married bachelor.
Not necessarily. No, it wouldn't.
Yeah, it would, because minds don't exist outside of brains.
Okay. Now we're okay. This is where we're going to get.
Well, let me remove your brain and see how much you think about.
Gotcha. So let me ask this. I'll quote Dennett on this. Daniel Dennett on that. He says that in order for someone to be a person, that this person has to be rational. That personhood would be conscious. He is self-conscious in that he is capable of regarding him, her, itself as a subject to the state of consciousness. Now, would you agree with those three premises that in order for someone
he looks so angelic there, doesn't he? Just looking up at the lens. Sorry, you froze at a very funny position.
That P is rational, P has consciousness, P is self-aware. Would that be enough to be personal?
All of those things,
or to be a person.
All of those things require material existence. You can't have one without the other, and until you can demonstrate it, no.
So
that's like that's like saying the Bachelor is all of that. It's just also married.
So you're saying that, and this is probably where we're also going to disagree. Is that you? So I'm guessing you're not a substance dualist then.
No. For those of you who are watching, substance dualism is the idea that there is an immaterial aspect to those material things. And so if we're talking about a human body, we're talking about the existence of a soul. I don't think we have souls. And I have pretty good reason for it, because everything anybody has ever been able to describe about a soul is intrinsically tied to the physical body that we have. Not only that, but even if you were to grant that the soul had some separate quality, how would that soul be able to interact with the human body? Because intangible cannot interact with tangible definitionally. So no, I do not ascribe to substance dualism. I feel like it's unfounded and is just shoehorned into things.
Gotcha. Well, then that's I guess where we're going to be at an impasse, because I would say that on Dennett's definition of what it means to be personal, or what it means for someone to be for what it means to be personal.
So
those three things would apply to an unembodied mind.
Okay, so let's take a look at what the null position should be. Should it be dualist, or should it be non-substance dualist? And I would say that if we both agree to substance existing, we're both on the same page. That's just where I stop. The next piece is the dual part of it, the non-substantial part. That's something that you're claiming away from what we agree on. And it is on you to show. And because that requires an explanation, because that requires evidence, the null position should be this naturalistic one until you can show that dualism. And because of that, I win. At least so far. I'm not.
Go ahead. Sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay, man. Go for it. I've been snarky lately.
No, it's okay. So what I'm simply ascribing here is you said you need to have, correct me if I'm wrong, you need to have agency that's not tied to physical. Is that what you said? I don't remember.
That's fine.
And what I'm simply saying is that an unabided mind would be something that has agency that's not tied to physical. And that definition would be right in line with what Dennett says as far as what it means to be personal.
Yeah, I don't care what Dennett says.
Well, I'm just saying I'm just using Dennett because I don't want the. He's only talking about the scholars that are in his house.
Dean. Dean.
Yo.
I know you. You're a smart guy. You're someone whose opinion matters to me. And because of that, you don't need to quote Dennett for me to listen. I'm listening to you.
Gotcha. Well, and I think that's something that you probably need to. I'm actually 15 minutes by, but I can go another. I can go another, and that happened quick. Another 15, but I want to try and tie this together.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we've been everywhere, and I think that's more on me not understanding what you're saying rather than vice versa.
No, that's okay, because if you didn't understand, that means that people who are watching didn't understand. And so whereas I don't care if 80% of the people watching got it, I don't care if 90% of the people watching got it, the reason we go back over it is so that those people who didn't can follow along. And if that helped, I'm happy.
So if I'm understanding you correctly throughout the hour and 45 minutes that we've been talking,
which you've been very gracious to have. Thank you.
Well, thanks for putting up with my connection problems, both personally and mechanically through my computer. Structure's good. Structure's good with the Kalam. Certainly, there's an inductive part of the argument that is used. As far as the conceptual analysis goes, you're down with timeless, spaceless, immaterial, powerful, and as so far as it is enough to create a universe. But the big piece to this that you disagree with is the personal aspect. And the reason that you disagree. Because why? Go ahead.
No. I want to know if you've got it. Actually, I shouldn't have cut it.
And because what you're saying that you disagree with the personal aspect of it is because you can't have there's no agency that's tied to a non-physical thing.
Right.
Is what you're saying. Right. And so in order for you to be convinced that there is agency that's tied to a non-physical thing, that would have to be either would it have to be logically demonstrated, physically demonstrated, however you want to phrase that. You can phrase
Absolutely.
that. And my point was that those initial operating conditions are not present. And your response to that was, well, initial operating conditions weren't present for both sides of that. They weren't. They said something to the effect that they weren't equal because you don't have it.
Yeah, we had the islands and we had the pot of boiling water, and the creator would be V or the volcano. Mm-hmm. And when I said it has to be islands, you said, my problem is that the volcano operating conditions. I said, okay. And so then I applied that, because if we apply that correctly, it would be, I'm disputing the pot of water boiling because V has to have operating conditions.
Initial operating conditions, and she does.
In the same way that you ruled out the volcano as the creator of that thing,
Yeah.
it also rules out the one that you're proposing.
So then it would rule out V2 because V needs also has initial operating conditions for her existence as well.
Yes.
Okay. So all right. So I see the fault in the analogy then, with regards to that. And so
if I ever hear you use that analogy again, I'm going to call you and shame you. I'm going to get like the shame bell from Game of Thrones. Ding, 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 shame.
Gotcha.
Okay.
No, that's fine. That's perfectly okay. You should. And I guess my argument then for that is even if V or V has initial operating conditions for her existence, given her parents exist, and their parents exist, yada yada yada, all
just
through.
I just wanted to nitpick the they them pronouns if you can, please.
I'm sorry. What?
V uses they them pronouns.
I did not know that. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I did not know that.
No, go ahead.
I did not. I apologize to V. I didn't know that. So just as V's parents existed, those her parents. Sorry.
There.
V's
It's okay.
These parents would be the initial operating conditions that bring about V.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So let's track that real quick. And so you have that all the way back. As far as time can go. Those types of initial operating conditions don't exist. What I was trying to say is those types of initial operating conditions don't exist to our best explanation or to the evidence that we have for the universe.
Right. And if we are
there's no volcano for the universe.
Exactly. And there's also no V for the universe. And the reason is the same both ways. Because if you want to grant that this God necessarily has to exist, then okay. But the idea that it's personal versus non-personal is so far non-substantiated, because you're saying that because if I were to use your argument back at you, I would say it necessarily is impersonal. And it has to necessarily be impersonal because it couldn't be any other way. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And for the same reason, when you say, Eric, it has to be personal, it couldn't be any other way, that does not make sense to me.
Okay. First half came in a little fuzzy because of my connection.
Sure.
I missed this half. Go ahead.
No worries. So what I was saying is you were granting a special permission, right? I would consider it a case of special pleading. And I can show you this. And I'm going to show you this by giving you the example of this conversation. What I said was, you gave this definition of a God or a creator, and that creator necessarily has to have this personal quality. And I'm saying that is just as weird as me telling you, Dean, this creator necessarily has to have an impersonal quality.
Okay. Would it be a better argument to say that? And I don't know if it is or not. I'm just flying by the seat of my pants here. Would it be better to say that it's timeless, spaceless, immaterial, and has
at a minimum some ability to instantiate a universe,
or to say that it has some type of I don't know outside of maybe I'm conflating two different definitions of personal. That could definitely be happening.
Maybe.
I'm open to that.
I feel like at this point, I'm sorry. Go ahead and finish.
I'm simply saying that if there's no scientific explanation we've described that, no initial operating conditions, then it seems like a
non-scientific
it seems like agency would be involved in choosing to create. I don't know if there's a third option there.
Well,
impersonal.
Something that's not a person, something that's impersonal, something that's not a person doesn't. Something that's not a person or is not an agent doesn't will or choose anything.
Agreed.
So it essentially wouldn't exist if it's not an agent.
You're right. Well, no, actually, I pointed at the island train as an example.
Well, no, that's true. That's true. But I'm guessing it would be able to,
as an example.
Well, if it was impersonal, I don't know.
You know what?
Go ahead.
Right now, we're at the point where we are most honestly saying, Dean, we're taking pot shots at something that we can't know right now because we don't have the evidence. We're postulating on something, and once we start to ascribe qualities to nothing, it stops being nothing. And that's where it ends. If you want to pull personal out of that argument, then I'd be willing to move forward. I would just want to go, okay, we have this placeholder being that is intangible, timeless, spaceless. And at a minimum, I don't like powerful because it makes me think of Castle Grayskull. It makes me think of Dungeons and Dragons and Warlocks. I have the power. No, at a minimum, is able to instantiate a universe.
Okay.
So we have this hypothetical chalkboard placeholder, and now we need to see if that placeholder belongs in the real world. We need to take it off of the chalkboard and see if we can apply it here. In the same way, right, when we talk about multiverse, and I'll tell you why I think it's a good way to close this out, actually. When we talk about the multiverse, the reason I have a problem there isn't because it's impossible to imagine gravity working differently and working out different equations. I just think that it's mental masturbation. Just because you can work it out, just because you can do math on hypotheticals does not mean that those hypotheticals are necessarily there. Now, my math might be bad. I might not have enough information. And with more information, I'm willing to change my mind. In the same way that if I get more information, I might be able to get there. But so far, the examples that you've given, I think you agree with me now at the end of this that they don't measure up, at least not to the entire thing.
Well, let me ask this question. Unless I'm just...
And Dean has dropped. So I'm going to pop him over here right now. And if he pops back in, I want to be able to give him the last word, but I also don't want to sit and talk at a black screen. So I know it was a really long recording. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for joining me today. I really did enjoy this. I enjoy this for a lot of reasons. I enjoy this because people don't always know how to talk about these kinds of concepts. And I'm not saying I'm the best, but I'm saying at least I have some experience to help get there. There are different places along the way that I was stubborn. I was a bit of a butt. And am I always that way? No, I'm not. The reason I bring it up is because these are different steps along the way to think about, and it's important. If we get there, then we get there. And if we grant a thing, we can grant an idea, a thought experiment, without saying that it's necessarily true. The Kalam cosmological argument, as defined by Dr. William Lane Craig, as presented by Dean Meadows, doesn't stand up. And that's okay. It's just should not be at the front of your tool belt if you want to bring any of that up. So, with that said, I would like to thank my patrons. I still haven't put up my Patron tiers. I just said, hey, here it is. And there are people who are kind enough to hop in and help support. And really, honestly, that's helping make my rent for next month. And that's wonderful. For those of you who are able to, awesome. If you can't, hey, look, I'm not going to beg. I'm not going to plead. I just want you to enjoy this. So please, no guilt. With that said, I do want to thank my patrons. And they are, I'm pulling them up right now. Kathy, Rex, Levi, Girl with the Cane, Billy Drips, Alana, Megan, Ellen, Ray, James, Kristen, Kitty, Nathan, and Justin. Thank you. Thank you for your support. And I'm going to keep working at this. I want to find a way to do this that is fun and engaging and works for all of us. Because, well, I don't see enough conversations like this. And that's kind of what I would want to watch. But I definitely want your input. If you have something that you want to see, if you have an apologist you want me to reach out to, if there's a format or an idea that you want me to explore, I'm open to it. You can give me, shoot me an email. Actually, I think the best email to reach me at would be through one of the social media links found below. I check them pretty regularly, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. That said, thank you for joining me. I'll see you next week. And until then, do something good in your world. Take care.